Hello everyone, and welcome to the Monday, May 6th live broadcast of the Sidereal Insights Astro Update. I'm 𝗦𝗱𝗃𝗵𝘁𝘀. I'm the astrologer and artist of Mystic Physick Astrology. Thanks for joining me today. We are exploring the astrology of the current planetary transits across the heavens from a Western sidereal perspective on this broadcast. Every 2 weeks, we have a look at our upcoming transits. So if you need to look up your sidereal sign placements, we're using the 𝗦𝗱𝗃𝗵𝗵𝗵 zodiac, and there's an online calculator that you can use for free. I'll just drop a link into the comments. This is at Mystic Physick Astrology, and if you'll give me just one moment, I will load that for you. If my browser cooperates here. I just had to refresh it for a moment so I could pull up the broadcast in the browser. Okay, so there you go. And I'll include that in the video description at the end of the broadcast, and that way if you need to look it up, you can look it up before you watch the replay, for those of you who might be watching the replay. But thank you for joining me. So my aim with the broadcast is really to provide guidance on how we can consciously use the energy of the transiting planets to affect our lives in a positive way. And so that's really the idea. If you give value out of watching this broadcast every 2 weeks, I'd like to ask you to like and share the broadcast. Tag a friend if you know someone else who might be interested in following along the sidereal astrological transits. You can also, like Mystic Physick on Facebook, and you can subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. Today we're talking about current retrogrades and how you can use them. We've got about 3 planets retrograde right now, and those are 4 and 5 month long retrogrades, so I want to keep that fresh in your mind as we move through. We're going to talk a little bit about Mars and Mercury and what they're doing. They're about to enter mutual reception, plus we have some out of bounds activity going on that's important to be aware of through the middle of June. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the upcoming full moon in Scorpio. Plus, there's a bunch of conjunctions in the next couple of weeks that you might want to mark on your calendar and keep an eye on those dates. We have eclipses coming up. We're just entering the front end of our July eclipse season. And we have some sign changes going on this month, or the next 2 weeks as well. So that's what we're talking about in today's broadcast. Excuse me while I move the stack of books and notes on my desk here. So let's recap a little bit where we're at right now. So we have Jupiter currently retrograde in sidereal Scorpio. We have Saturn and Pluto retrograde in Sagittarius. And so if it kind of feels like we're moving backwards in some areas, or maybe not making very much progress, that's going to be why. So be paying close attention to the Saturn, Pluto, and Jupiter-ruled areas of life in your natal chart to see where those slowdowns may be happening. And in the houses these 3 planets are currently transiting in your chart. And of course, those are going to be indicated by Sagittarius and Scorpio. Okay, you can use Jupiter's retrograde as an opportunity for a do-over. Okay, so this is a wonderful chance to take some time to take a look at what you've been doing, kind of examine where you might need to make a course correction or improve upon what you've been working on. You can use Jupiter's retrograde to do that. Saturn's retrograde is really about addressing an unmet or outstanding obligation or commitment. Okay, and then finally, Pluto's retrograde is an opportunity for deep inner healing and transformation. Stay tuned. I'm working on putting together I have a video where we talked about Pluto retrograde. This is going back quite some time. Some of you might remember we had this conversation about Pluto retrograde. Well, I've done some light editing to the video to kind of make it relevant for the annual Pluto retrograde in Sagittarius. And as soon as I have that ready, I'll post a link for you. So if you want to review that video and explore a little bit more in depth how you can use Pluto's retrograde in Sagittarius, you'll be able to do that. So stay tuned for a link to drop on that. And then also eclipses. Eclipse season is upon us. Of course, the eclipses have an effect of up to 60 days before and after, and we just entered that 60-day window for the July eclipses on April 30th. So some of you may have received some kind of eclipse news in the days right around April 30th. And there's a broadcast that we just did, the 2009 eclipses, critical dates and degrees for July 2019. I will also share a link for that broadcast if you'd like to get more details about what dates and what degrees you want to keep eye on in the coming 5 months. Yes, 5 months. That's how long we'll be feeling the effect of these eclipses through well into September. Okay, so I'll share a link for that as well. Right now we have the sun currently transiting Sidereal Aries, right? And that's until May 15th. So not too much longer, just a little bit over a week before the sun moves into Sidereal Taurus. Now, while the sun's in Sidereal Aries, excuse me, this is kind of an energizing and revitalizing kind of transit with the sun in Aries. Aries being the first sign of the zodiac, the sign of initiative, the concept of the germination of life, right? Coming into life. And so we still have this active initiatory energy in effect until May 15th. And once the sun moves into Taurus on May 15th, the tempo will change a little bit. We may become a little bit more security conscious, and we may become a little bit more aware of our comfort zones and a little bit less likely to step outside of them than we are when the sun is in Aries. The sun is in Aries is very much about bravery and courage at times, and sometimes those are things you need to feel comfortable stepping outside of your comfort zone and venturing into new territory. So we'll see a little bit of a shift for that, especially as the sun moves through Taurus. We have Mercury right now in Aries just until May 18th. We have Mars in Taurus for about 2 more days. Now, we've been talking about Mars in Taurus. It was about a 6-week-long transit, that this could be a little more passive-aggressive, that it could be a little more frustrating, that you might not make as much progress because of the stubborn, headstrong tendencies that Mars in Taurus can ignite, right? The resistance to maybe compromise, right? And we're feeling that a little bit more intensely with Mars out of bound on top of it. But Mars is going to move into Sidereal Gemini on the 8th, so in just 2 days. And so if you've been feeling that frustration, if you've been feeling a friction that's not budging or allowing you to move forward into compromise or change or just shift, be patient. A couple of days, Mars will move into Gemini, and we may be at that point in a better position to come to an understanding, maybe to revisit negotiation and dialogue in a way that's mutually beneficial. So hold tight. A shift is coming, and there's more to that Mars and Gemini story as well. You want to remember Mars is out of bounds right now. And planets out of bounds, they don't behave the same way that they normally do. Their very best and very worst qualities can come out to the extreme when planets are out of bounds. And so for Mars out of bounds, this is a tendency for us to become a lot more headstrong, a lot more driven, a lot more ambitious. We're more courageous, we're braver. But we're also way more self-centered. We're more impulsive. We can be overly aggressive. We aren't smart about picking our battles. We can fly off the handle and overreact to the stupidest little things. And sometimes that can happen in really uncharacteristically violent ways. And so Mars out of bounds is this kind of extreme energy. And that's going to be with us until the middle of June, right? So be aware of that tendency, cultivate patience, practice compassion, practice forgiving and forgetting. That particular energy that we're going through with Mars out of bounds is going to be shifting and becoming a little more complicated in the next couple of weeks. And I do have a link for you to our new moon in Sidereal Aries intention setting program that we just did on the 3rd of May, where I talk a little bit more in depth about how that can play out and what you may want to keep in mind and some coping strategies for getting yourself through it with as little damage as possible. Okay. Conjunctions and sign changes. The 8th, when we do have Mars moving into Gemini, we also have Mercury conjunct Uranus that day. So you want to put a pin in it and kind of keep an eye, because unexpected news can come up when these two meet up, right? Uranus is the planet of surprises and sudden events. Mercury is the planet of travel and communication. So you can have opportunities to travel come up unexpectedly, but you can also have news arrive just completely out of the blue. Okay? So what this can mean is if you have a planet or point at 8 degrees of Aries in your sidereal natal chart, that's where this conjunction is taking place, you are more likely to be directly affected by this news than someone who maybe doesn't. If that planet or point is near 8 degrees of Leo or Sagittarius, you may find the news is pleasant. Like, I mean, you could hear from a friend or run into a friend out of the blue, you know. If you have a planet or point near 8 degrees of Cancer or Libra or Capricorn, the news could be a little bit more challenging. And then finally, what you'll want to do is take a close look at your sidereal natal chart, your birth chart, for any modifying conditions which might affect either your natal Mercury or your natal Uranus, because those can inform how you may feel this particular conjunction. Okay? Now, with Mars moving into Gemini on the 8th of May, he brings kind of a surge of energy and activity to that part of your chart, and you won't get that energetic surge for another 2 years. So capitalize on that. Take advantage of it. It's going to last for just over 6 weeks. So you want to use that time while Mars is in Gemini to build as much momentum as you can. Okay? Mars in Gemini can make us kind of fidgety and nervous. So make a plan, have a way to channel that energy into physical activity, or give your hands something to do to keep them busy. And then also keep in mind, sudden insights, sudden inspirations are possible with that conjunction of Mercury and Uranus. And so something may suddenly become very, very clear near the 8th if you're going to be personally affected. So just kind of keep an eye on that. And then later on in May, and we'll talk about this a little bit more to recap it on the next Sidereal Insights broadcast, but a little later on in May, at the 26th, Mercury is going to join Mars out of bounds. And so we'll want to keep an eye on that. But like I said, there's a link. Actually, I have it right here. Let me give it to you in the comments. So this is to the new moon intention setting in Aries, and part 1 specifically is where we get into the Mars Mercury dynamic going into the remainder of May and June. We're going to have Mars and Mercury in mutual reception. That's where they are in each other's signs, with Mars in Gemini and Mercury in Aries. That'll last for, I want to say, right around 2 weeks, 10 days or 2 weeks. And then what happens is we have Mercury moving out of bounds to join Mars. And so then they'll both be behaving erratically. And that'll last in both cases until right around the middle of June. So there's some special things you want to keep in mind for those 2 transits and how those dynamics can play out. But watch part 1 of the new moon in Aries intention setting video to get a better feel for how that can play out and what you may need to know to navigate it. Okay. Now, we also have Venus in Pisces right now until May 11th, so for just a little bit longer. Venus is exalted in Pisces, and when planets are in their sign of exaltation, they display their finest qualities. So for Venus, this is things like cooperation and generosity and harmony, artistic ability, beauty, fairness, love, genuine appreciation. These are ways that Venus will express herself when she's in Pisces. Now, when she leaves Pisces on the 11th for Aries, she's going to move into her sign of detriment. So this is almost a 180-degree turnaround in the way that Venus will express her energy, right? Venus is very much about the senses and about what we appreciate and what we value. And Aries is the sign of the self. Okay, so you can see how the planet of what we value and appreciate and love in the sign of the self is maybe not the best position because it can make us more concerned with our own priorities, our own life, what's important to us. And that there's a time and a place for that, right? But when we have Venus in Aries, we have to be extra careful that we're stepping into that at the right time and place. So it can mean that where we were once willing to sacrifice our own desires for the greater good, now we're more likely to put our own selfish needs and wants first. We're much more likely to do what's necessary to get what we want, regardless of what other people want and what other people prefer, while Venus is in Aries. Okay, the sun will move into Taurus on the 15th. Okay, we talked about that a little bit. That's our need for security taking precedence. We might hesitate to step out of those established comfort zones. So be proactive during that time about finding clarity in your communications with others. Being more willing to engage in exchange of ideas, exchange of values, and being really clear with others that you're engaging with around those sorts of things. Okay. On the 18th, this will be a fun day. This is our full moon in Scorpio. We have Mercury moving into Taurus that same day. We have Venus conjunct Uranus that day. So another conjunction you'll want to put a pin in your calendar. That full moon carries the potential to transform our understandings of events or circumstances in whatever area of life Scorpio occupies in your natal chart, right? So power dynamics may be undergoing some kinds of changes, especially in a way that alters the flow of communication. Meetings and discussions might be taking place around that time, and they could bear unexpected fruit thanks to that Venus-Uranus conjunction, okay? That same day, like we said, we have Mercury moving into Taurus. So this is the 18th of May. Mercury moving into Taurus takes him out of mutual reception with Mars. Keeping in mind that planets that are in mutual reception tend to behave like each other to some degree. So we leave mutual reception for just this brief window of time before Mercury goes out of bounds and starts behaving erratically again. Okay, so while we have Mercury in Taurus before he goes out of bounds, take the opportunity to try to make progress on negotiations that may have stalled while Mars was in Taurus. Okay, you may be able to make a little bit more progress, and then maybe even more progress when Mercury finally moves out of Taurus himself, okay, into Gemini. Because Gemini is a little bit more flexible, it's a little bit more adaptable and more reactive to changing needs and changing circumstances. But while we have Mercury in Taurus, I want to stress, focus on articulating what is most important to you and take the time to get really clear on your priorities, okay? And then you can act from that point. When when Mercury finally moves into Gemini, you may be able to see even more forward motion, okay? And then finally on the 21st, we have the Sun conjunct Mercury. Well, I shouldn't say finally. There's a little bit more to go after that. We have Sun conjunct Mercury on the 21st. That's another date that you'll want to put a note on your calendar. That's going to take place in Taurus. So if you have Gemini or Virgo Sun or rising sign, you may want to take note because you could find yourself in the spotlight in some way on that day. Okay, so if you need to make an impression, you could use the 21st to do that, especially if you have Gemini or Virgo Sun or rising. And then you'll also want to take a look at your sidereal natal chart to 5 degrees Taurus for a clue as to how directly that particular conjunction might affect you. For readers with Leo Sun or rising, you'll want to take note too, because that conjunction is activating professional and personal houses for you, depending on whether you have Leo Sun or Leo rising. And so you may also find yourself in a position to clearly communicate your needs, which is always the first step in getting what you want. Okay. And then finally, just the last few announcements before we hop off the broadcast. It's not too late for your new moon in Aries intention setting practice. Remember, you have the first 10 days after a new or full moon for your practice. So be sure to do that. I'll share a link. Actually, I think I already did, but I'll share a link in the video description when I hop off. Also, be sure to hit the website at mysticphysick.com/sidereal monthly horoscopes and read up on your May overview and your short report. Read the short report for your sidereal sun sign and your sidereal rising sign to kind of get a more complete picture as to what you can expect. And then also join me Friday on May 17th. We're going to have our full moon in Sidereal Scorpio releasing practice in the Sidereal Insights Astrology community here on Facebook. We'll do it live. You have to be a member of the community to join me live. And that'll be at 7:30 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time, 9:30 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, or if you're watching from the UK, 2:30 a.m. British Standard Time, or 1:30 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time if you're watching from Melbourne or thereabouts. But that'll be on May 18th, okay, if you're watching from UK or Australia. Better yet, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel. That way you don't ever miss a broadcast. You'll get notified as soon as our most current broadcasts are posted to the YouTube channel. And please follow Mystick Physick on Facebook and be sure to like and share this broadcast. And thank you so much for watching. We'll catch you again next time.